All right, we are live, everybody. Welcome back to Casual Conversation with G and A. So today we have a one of our good Catholic friends, James, and we decided to talk about the miracles of Fatima because I we are getting close to October, and October was when the miracle of the sun happened. So we kind of just wanted to talk about that. Um, so yeah, hi James.
Hey, how are you two doing?
We're good.
Good.
Yeah.
You know, it's been a crazy year for us,
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Yeah,
we're
same here.
we're hanging in there. We've had a lot of, people like pass away in our family, so it's been really hard, but we're
Oh, I'm
okay.
sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it's okay. It's I guess it's life, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, but how are you? How's everything with you?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. It's not having contact with people kind of stresses you out a little bit every now and then, but
Yeah.
it's okay. We should be getting through it pretty soon, I think.
Yeah, I hope so cuz
Yeah.
I don't know. But like going through this whole situation, I feel like I kind of got to the point where I appreciate the little things, and everybody's company and, say what you needed to say to people you love. So, I think it's kind of like a
Like eye opening.
yeah,
Yeah.
from what's going on. But
And
I
you're
think I think it's kind of a blessing because the world has been so fast paced for so many years with no sign of slowing down, and now everyone was forced to just stop everything they're doing and have to
right.
converse with one another.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
so,
It's
so I
it's
think,
good. Yeah. It has its ups and downs, but you know, thankfully everybody's, it good, and we're trying to get through this whole, situation with the whole pandemic thing going on. So,
yeah,
yeah, scary. Scary. Scary times.
yeah,
Scary times.
yeah. Well, it kind of ties in with what we're going to be talking about tonight. So,
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that's true.
yeah.
Okay. So go ahead. Do you want to start it, or do you want us to start, or
Well, from what a lot of people know with Fatima, that there were three shepherd children in Portugal, Fatima, that were visited by Our Lady. And she came with a message of penance and praying the rosary. But through those visits, there are a lot of things talked about, such as prophecies that were called secrets at the time. And that's where it pretty much begins, except for a lot of things that aren't talked about are the visits by angels beforehand
right?
in the
Yeah.
year 1916, which I think is pretty fascinating because it was used as a starting point to prepare them to see Our Lady. And it's kind of neat that God went through all those lengths just to strengthen their will and resolve through prayer.
Yeah.
And so, let's see, in the beginning, I think it was the springtime of 1916. They were outside in a field and it started pouring rain everywhere. And of course, back then, they didn't have the amenities that we have. So
Right.
they had to run to a cave and, leave all their sheep behind because they're shepherds. And so they run to a cave with their lunches and they decide that they're going to wait it out, eat their lunches, say a rosary, play with some jacks. And then finally the rain stops and they decide, hey, well, okay, we'll leave now. Well, that's when, strong winds start going by and they're like, well, okay, what's happening? Bright light appears and a cloud forms on top of a tree and a man appears in the form and he's like, fear not, I am an angel of peace. Can you imagine seeing something like that
You
as a
know what?
kid?
Yeah, it's crazy because kids, you're taught, hey, if there's a stranger, run, right? Like,
hmm
so, I'm surprised that they were kind of like, oh, maybe it's just like a
a
feeling.
feeling.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
get like a feeling that it's not somebody bad or evil. So,
Yeah,
yeah, that's interesting. It's awesome. I would love to
yeah.
see an angel.
Man, what would you do if you saw an angel like that? Just trees swaying back and forth, and you're just
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's probably they would give you like a sense of like a feeling
Yeah.
or like a sense of like a positive because
Mhm.
like the whole ghost situation or like when
yeah.
something evil is around, you can kind of sense that it's negative and it's dark, you know?
Hmm.
Yeah.
So
Oh
that's
yeah.
kind of how maybe you can sense that it's something beautiful and positive and it just fulfills you like it's amazing, you know?
Oh yeah. Like
That's how
in
I
the
picture it. Yeah.
yeah, same here. It's just like in the Old Testament days, whenever an angel would appear, their very first thought was, "Okay, drop to the ground, start bowing." It's
Oh
like
my.
because they
Yeah.
they thought it was God. They had
Yeah.
no idea. They're just like, "Okay, this is serious now."
Yeah,
Like,
I know.
and as you said, they just do. You know, and so yeah, it's so the angel appears and they're of course they're scared and he's telling them, hey, fear not, I'm just an angel of peace.
Mhm.
And he proceeds to bow and he says, please come and pray with me. And so then the children bow as well with him, and they're like, well, okay. And so he says that you need to pray this. And it's what was it? It said, my God, I believe, I adore, I hope, and I love you, and I beg pardon of those who do not believe, do not adore, do not hope, and do not love you. And he said, repeat it 3 times. And then eventually said, you need to pray this every day for the reparations of sins, and that your voice has favor with the Lord, basically,
Yeah.
and to keep doing this. So that just adds even more to it. It's just
I
like,
know.
okay.
It's kind of and for kids too, how do you like fathom that situation? And what's being said? It's like, I'm only 8,
Yeah.
but I'm sure like an 8-year-old nowadays, like they're already doing their communion, right? So they kind of know. But
Yeah,
back then, these kids obviously were at a deeper level of Catholicism because they knew their rosaries, they would
yeah,
pray. So that's I mean I think it would have been familiar to them.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I remember when I was going through communion, there, I still have a picture of it to this day. They had us walking through with like fake grapes and bread, and for whatever reason, I got to hold the big loaf of fake bread, and you can see the pictures. I'm just walking around with a big smile on my face. I had no idea what was going on. I was just
You
happy I
know,
was holding a piece of bread.
that's so funny that you talk about that because I remember when we were preparing, because you have to go to the classes, and we had this one day where we had to wash our parents' feet. And
Oh wow.
and everybody, like there was somebody, I don't know if it was, I think it was each kid had to wash their parents' feet
Mhm.
because, and now that I think about it, I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Like, I don't know. I would be embarrassed. I'd be like, no, don't do that. And I remember my parents, they were embarrassed. They were like, oh, like, why?
Yeah.
But I mean, it's cool though. It's cool experiences to kind of think about like how it happened back then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely a different world back then than where we
Yeah.
are now. It's just, everything was really, really strict with the faith, and you were learning everything from childhood.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And that was pretty much the first apparition of the angel. And then it is God said, well, okay, we're going to send you the angel a second time. And so I believe it was the summertime now. And then and just what we were speaking about, being a kid, you don't know what's happening. Maybe you don't know what's going on. They're out playing around by a well, and then the angel appears and is like, whoa, what are you doing? It's just like you're supposed to be praying for reparations of sins. It's just like
Yeah.
the kids are like, wait, hold up a second, we're just having fun. you
Right.
know
Yeah.
Uh, and it's just like you're supposed to be praying a great deal. It's like the hearts of Jesus and Mary have merciful designs on yourselves and prayers and sacrifices continually to the Most High. And then it's like, well, yeah,
Yeah, what you
it's
said.
just
Yeah.
like, how are we supposed to sacrifice ourselves? The kids don't know. They're just like, well, what are we supposed to do? And the angel says, make everything you do a sacrifice and offer, as it is reparations for his sins by which God is offended. And says, by doing so, you'll obtain the conversion of sinners. And it's like, you will eventually bring peace to the country. And it's like, well, I'm just a little kid. What do you mean I'm
Yeah.
going to bring peace to this country here?
That's a lot of weight on your shoulders as a kid. I mean, I would be like, "No, you know what? I'm okay. I'd rather play."
It's like, you see these jacks in my pocket? Yeah, they're kind of
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's
Uh,
cute.
yeah. Yeah, I still, even after all of that, I just be like, well, I mean, I don't know. It's it's like you'd have to eventually go along with it. I mean, you see this cloud manifest into the form of a man, and it's just like, well, yeah, all right.
I
Like, what else?
know.
What else are we gonna do here?
Yeah,
And
that's easy to think about.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so basically, from what I read and what I studied, after the two apparitions, the children did change their ways, like instantly, before they would go out into the fields and they would eat their lunches, like at the beginning of the first apparition.
Mhm.
And they'd really have no care for the poor or anything in their life. Maybe they did, maybe they had some sort of, you know, humility towards them. But after the second angel appeared, they were offering their lunches to all the poor children. They were
Mhm.
deciding they were going to just starve themselves as an offering of sacrifice. We're not going to do this anymore. And so here's our food. And then they were deciding they weren't going to drink anything. And it's, that's just amazing to think that a kid would be three children, not only one saying, well, this is what we're going to do. And imagine if the whole world did something like that.
I
Everything
know.
would everything would change so fast.
I
Uh,
know.
yeah,
It's sad. It's sad. It's, just to think about how much we have and there's other people that don't. And so, like, and that's what I like to tell, like, you all the time, when she's having, um, something like a terrible day and she's like, oh, I didn't get what I needed to get. And it's like, dude, like I always tell her, there's people like starving on the other side of the world, like, and so, but it's just, you get caught up, you get caught up in the world you live in and everything around it. And it's like, you kind of sometimes have to sit and think and remember about people suffering. So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, I was having a conversation the other day with someone who didn't believe in God, and he was bringing up the topic of morality, saying he doesn't need to know a God because he knows what's moral and what's
Hmm.
right and wrong. And he used an example of like, punching someone in the face. I know that's wrong. So it's just, I don't need a God to tell me that. It's just like, but I had to explain to him, you don't understand what life was like before Christianity. I was like, the morality you ascribe to was not the reality of the world. And you go back to the Mayans, their morality was building pyramids and taking men up to the top, cutting their
Hmm.
chests open, ripping their hearts out, cutting their heads off, and kicking their lifeless body down the pyramids. I know that's harsh you know,
Yeah,
to speak,
it's
but
true.
that was their morality. Human sacrifice was a daily thing in that civilization. And then you have the Vikings who, just went to different villages and pillaged them and then raped the women, and that was their morality. It's just like, but we in the Christian society say this is no longer moral. And
Yeah.
it's things are, you don't really look at the scope of things with the civilization we're living in. And then maybe you look at something in the Middle East and what the Christians are going through there right now.
Hmm.
They're going through such a huge persecution there.
Right.
And
And
so it's just like, I look at what I got. I got candles, I got light, and I got some water. And it's, yeah, sometimes you get blinded by the inconveniences of this
mundane
world.
things. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially when
Yeah.
you're locked in your house for 2 years. It's
I
like
know.
it gets even more
Little things
cumbersome.
become crazy, big things But
Yeah.
yeah, it's really sad. It's really sad, and we were talking about that, about martyrs and people that die for their faith still now today,
Yeah.
and it's crazy to think about. And
Yeah.
it's courageous too, I kind of almost like admire people that do that, and I try to put myself in that situation, and it's just really hard. It's really hard to think about.
No, yeah. What you could say, well, I know what I would do. I would
Mhm.
courageously stick my chest out and say, take my head, for I love the Lord. But once that sword is against your neck, you don't know what you're gonna do. It's just
Right.
like Saint Peter. He probably boasted on what he would do. I would never leave you, Lord. And it's like I would never leave you. And he kept on telling the Lord he would never leave him. Well, then, once the Lord was getting handed over, what did Peter do? He denied him. It's just like,
Yeah.
he's like, I don't know this man. you know?
Yeah, like, and for me, because you know how you have to choose a patron saint when you do your confirmation. Well, I chose Saint John the Baptist, and I was like, I just love him. I just feel like him against the world. That's who he was. And
Yeah.
so, and how courageous he was, and how he, like, till his last breath, he was just screaming out, what his beliefs were, and he didn't care. He didn't matter to him anything else but that. And so, I love that him as a saint. He's such an awesome dude,
Yeah.
and I hope to be like him someday. But like you said, when it comes to like that situation, what do you do? You're faced it's something scary and sad, and like, but I mean, hopefully the Holy Spirit just washes through you and you're good. Or like in the Bible, those three men that were gonna get burnt. Or do you remember that story?
Yeah. Yeah. When they were
And
getting
then,
tossed into the furnace. Yeah.
yeah, nothing happened. I'm like, I hope that happens.
Oh, yeah. And then,
But
then an apparition of the Son of Man
yeah,
appeared,
yeah,
covering over him. And it's just like, and then Daniel getting tossed into a pit of lions.
right,
It's just like, yeah, it's just like, I'm not going to be scared, whatever. And he came out unscathed.
yeah.
It's pretty amazing. Uh,
It's a true test.
yeah, it's like my
Yeah.
patron saint is Saint Ignatius of Antioch, and when you read his epistles, he's uh he's openly, boasting about his martyrdom and that he knows how he's going to die. And he's, back then you had to write letters to communicate. So he's in
Hmm.
shackles on a Roman, jail prison cart type deal, getting pulled by horses for going through all these cities, having time to think about how these lions and beasts are going to tear him apart and eat him alive. And he's writing about all this, saying, I'm going to be the wheat for Christ, and then they're going to grind me down and purify me, and all this. And it's just like, it's amazing.
Wow.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Do you want to share your patron saint?
My patron saint is Saint Peter. I just, personally, I chose him because I just felt like a connection
Yeah.
to him. And I don't know, like, to me, he's the best. I feel like
He's the leader.
He's the leader. He has one of the most important roles. And, he did make a huge, he came and made
Huge impact.
yeah, a very huge impact. So I have like great appreciation for him. And I feel like, when I read about him, I feel like he was like Jesus's best friend.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. He's just my favorite.
Yeah.
That's cool, man.
He's awesome.
Yeah, he definitely is. Yeah, we wouldn't, it's just like you say, without Jesus, we wouldn't have the church. But then you look at Mary, without Mary, we wouldn't have the church. Then you look at Peter, it's just like, without Peter, we would have had the church.
Yeah.
Or even
Mhm.
John the Baptist, because, he obviously had a central role in everything as well, in announcing the arrival of Christ.
Yeah.
It's amazing, how it all goes. And then, like, Saint Peter being your patron saint, well, he's the one who ordained my patron saint as a bishop, which is
Wow.
pretty cool. And
That is
Saint,
so cool.
yeah, and
Yeah.
Saint John the Apostle was a teacher to my patron saint. So he knew both of the apostles, and the things he wrote as well were coming directly from them, which came directly from Christ. And it's just it's awesome
Wow.
when you look at those things.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah,
I'm like, I want to meet him.
yeah,
Yeah. But
yeah,
awesome.
yeah, definitely. It's so with the children, and when they were giving all this food to the poor kids, and they were giving all these sacrifices, that's not all they were doing. They were also like kneeling down and praying every hour on the hour the prayer that the angel told them to pray. So I mean, imagine doing that for several months, for a full year, every single hour going down and praying the prayer that you're supposed to pray. And on top of the rosary too, going to mass, confession, receiving the Eucharist, all that stuff. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, that's a holiness that I don't think I could ever achieve. And I, when you start reading about what happened, you understand why God chose them. And so it's like,
Yeah.
and they had something in them like Noah had that no one else did.
Mm-hmm.
And were you gonna say something?
No, I was
Oh,
just
okay.
thinking about that. Yeah, because you know how I go to mass on Sundays and I tell my son, hey, look at the priest. Isn't he awesome? Don't you want to be a priest when you get older? He's like, no, I'm okay. I'm like, oh man, it's not a calling.
It's,
Yeah.
I
So funny.
just some kids will fully understand what's taking place on the altar,
Yeah.
and what the priest is doing, and some kids that like you said, their vocation is going to be something completely different.
Mm-hmm.
It's not everyone's prepared to be able to constantly offer the daily sacrifice. That's the hard thing to imagine. And then going on to that topic, that's what ends up taking place with the third apparition of the angel, which took place, I think it was around the autumn time. And he appears, and he appears just with a chalice in his hand, and then you have the Eucharist hanging from the chalice, and blood dripping from the Eucharist into the chalice. And of course, the kids, what do? They fall to their knees, and then they start repeating a prayer, which says, no, not them, but the angel repeated, Most Holy Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, I adore thee profoundly. I offer thee the most precious body and blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ, present in all the tabernacles of the world, in reparation for all the outrages, sacrileges, and indifferences by which he is offended. And through the infinite merits of his Sacred Heart and Immaculate Heart of Mary, I beg of thee the conversion of poor sinners. And it's, again, little kids are just like, well, they see this happening at mass, and then the angel decides to give them the Eucharist to Lucia, but he doesn't give anything like that to Francisco and Jacinta. He just gives the chalice of the blood, which is obviously still good
Yeah.
enough. I wouldn't deny it. I'd be like, hey, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's to me, that's the most purest form of it's not any greater or better than what a priest would do with the Eucharist, but when it's coming directly from an angel, it's just like I don't know, I would feel pretty special.
And I was thinking about that. The symbolism, right?
Mhm.
The Eucharist and the chalice and everything that kind of appears to them. And I kind of think about people that don't believe in that, or are separated brothers and sisters. I start thinking like, if an angel did this, like, doesn't it, like, you know, in your
Yeah.
mind, doesn't it say like, oh yeah, this is what the Catholic Church does? you know
Uh-huh.
I just thought about that when I read that, and I was like, that's very interesting. Unless, like, I don't know, some claims might be, oh, that's just something that kids were familiar with, and maybe that's, what he chose to do to, but it's still like, if he's doing it, then it should be right. You know,
Yeah.
an angel's doing this. So yeah, I just thought I'd add that.
Yeah, I mean, God doesn't do things for show.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the biggest mistake people think with God is just like, you know, that's why they say not to test the Lord. He's not going to do something just because you want him to do it. He does it for a reason. And, you know, he's not going to have an angel appear to three children, tell them to start, you know, making sacrifices and offerings and start praying all the time, and then get mad when they're praying and say, hey, look, you're supposed to be praying. And then after that, decide to start giving the Eucharist. And it's almost with the apparitions kind of like a drawn out mass, and that you're going to mass, then you're making your prayers and your offerings to the Lord. And then once you're done with your prayers and offerings and praising of God, then the Eucharist happens. It's kind of, he always does things which mirror, you know, everything that he has planned, including from like the Old Testament to where we are now with the Eucharist. It's pretty, and that was the last apparition of the angel, and I think that was enough where God said, well, okay, yeah, you've had your prayers, you've had all this, you've prepared yourself, now you can actually meet my mother.
Yeah, I know.
That's pretty cool. It's and then you start to wonder, like, well, and the kids don't know really what's going on in the world. And you have World War I's taking place, and I believe their oldest brother was drafted into the war, and so he's going off there. But they have no idea what's going on and, you know, what it's all about. They're just children. And it's like, and then you fast forward to a year, you know, a couple months later in 1917. That's when stuff starts happening in Russia, like accelerating in speed, because it used to be a Christian country, and that it was
really,
most of Europe was, you know, Christian and Catholic and Orthodox, and after the Orthodox Church split from Rome, eventually the Orthodox went all the way to Russia, and so you had an Orthodox Christian empire which lasted for close to 300 years under the dynasty of the Romanovs. But during that time, there were revolutions happening in Russia, and that was as well happening in Portugal, Fatima. And I believe it was March. They had a different calendar. So when you look at the dates, it says in February the revolution took place in Russia, but they were on the Julian calendar. But according to the Gregorian, it went to March. Just minor little things, but they ended up overthrowing the monarchy and disposing them. It wasn't quite yet the Bolshevik Revolution, but this is when Marxism started to take over, and they wanted to basically institute atheist empire. And this is starting to take place with all these apparitions. You kind of start seeing, when you start putting things together, why this is starting to happen, why these children were chosen. And several months later, that was when the first apparition of Our Lady appeared in May 13th, which is an important date even after that, which carries over, but we'll get to it when we get there. But so it's almost like the same situation. If you remember reading in Revelation, whenever it starts talking about Our Lady coming down from heaven, you know, what, how's it say in there? Basically the not the altar of God. My mind's drawing a blank, but it's always thunders, lightnings, and all of that. And then, you know, you see the beauty of Mary, and they of course don't know it's her, and that is they're just as dumbfounded as they were about the man angel. They're just thinking it's just a female angel now, but they're like, well, she's really pretty. And then Lucia asked the lady, she's like, "What do you want of us?"
Yeah.
And our lady was like, "I want you to meet me here for 6 months at the same hour on the 13th of each month." And Lucia's just like, "Well, are we gonna go to heaven?" And and our lady's just like, "Yeah, you will." It's just like, but and same with Jacinta, but Francisco will, but he needs to say many rosaries.
Wow.
It's like I
That's
can,
cute.
it's like I can imagine me being Francesco. Like, yeah, I definitely need to say a lot of rosaries at the
Mm-hmm.
time. Uh, and she says, the lady asks him, she's like, "Do you wish to offer yourselves to God and endure all the sufferings as reparation for the conversion of sinners?" And it's just like, just like with the angel at that point in time, you have no choice. You have to be like,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. And it's just like that's what we're gonna do. And
Mm-hmm.
then Our Lady basically goes through it's a reoccurring theme throughout all the apparitions, and that she's like, "Okay, this is what you're gonna do. Well, I want you to say the rosary every day to obtain peace and the end of the war, which was taking place all over right now with World War One." And that was the pretty much the first apparition. I think that's pretty neat. What do you think about it?
Yeah, that's, you know, and then the way that she appeared, and how they describe her, I feel like it's just it's beautiful. But I wouldn't know. I would be like, okay. I would probably feel the same way as the kids. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and because I was like thinking, oh, what war was happening around that time? But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Eileen was telling me it was the
One.
World War One that
Yeah.
started. That's scary.
Yeah, the very first World War is. I mean, I can't even imagine that. And at that time, it was even more, primitive that with the trench warfare and all that. I can't imagine being a part of that.
Yeah.
It's, yeah, it's just give me a second, please.
Do you want to share
Yeah, do you want me to get into that description of what happened?
on?
So,
Oh, with the war?
no, I'm just saying on October the 13th.
Uh-huh. Is that
Um,
oh no, because I think we're gonna do the rest of
We could
the
do whatever
apparition.
you want to do. It's, I mean, a lot of the apparitions were pretty much, Our Lady saying,
Yeah.
say the rosary every day and offer penance and do sacrifices. I think the only month there were 2 months where things kind of got a little different. I think was it July where the secrets were announced,
I
or
believe
basically
so, yeah,
the
because
yeah. Yeah,
the
those the prophecies. Yeah.
and the kids, I feel like they went through a lot of you know, people telling them like, "Oh, maybe you guys were just making this up. It's all not real," or just
Mm-hmm.
admit to it. And it was kind of hard because how do you get somebody to believe, right? Especially
Yeah.
children. You're thinking, "Oh, it's your imagination." But everything that they went through, it's just really really difficult. And but they held their ground, and they kept their stories the same. And so I know that in some of the apparitions, the children would tell our mother to if she can heal some of the people that were there showing up, because throughout these encounters, more people and more people started showing up.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they when they would ask things of her, she would say, yeah, I'll do it, but not all of them. I can't heal everybody, just some. And so, but tell everybody to continue praying for the end
Mm-hmm.
of the war. So I thought that was awesome. That's proof itself that some people were getting healed. There was miracles happening. There was uh these children were obviously talking to somebody, right?
Yeah.
So it's very interesting, very, very interesting. And I know that there's a lot of people that think, maybe it wasn't true, or maybe the children were just suffering because they were hungry or hallucinating, or,
I
Um,
mean, I guess it could be perceived as such. With the
yeah,
hallucinations, they were refusing to eat and drink but I'm sure they still had, a form of sustenance
yeah,
to keep them going. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made it as long as they did. And that's why a lot of people were asking for, healings and whatnot. There's like, they're not seeing Our Lady. It's like only Lucia was able to see and hear the lady and talk to her, but Jacinta, I think, was only able to see and hear, but she couldn't talk to the lady. And Francisco could only just see the lady. He couldn't hear what was being said or nothing. And
um,
then, so of course, all the people, they're not seeing anything. And that
yeah,
it's I think when after the first apparition, Lucia said that they weren't going to say anything. And I can't remember if it was Lucia or if it was Jacinta, but ended up bragging to their mom about seeing the lady. And of course, she runs them to I think the local bishop and starts telling them what happened, and they refuse to back down. They're like, no, we really saw this. You told us and brought us up never to lie. And why would we lie about this? And that's when, 50 people start showing up to apparitions, then 100 people. It's pretty cool. Just those three children, they start having such a huge impact on the amount of people around the world. And it wasn't
yeah,
easy to travel there. It's just like,
yeah,
there's no automobiles. They're traveling by, and maybe there was a little bit, but I'm trying to think of when the first car was. It wasn't commonplace then.
yeah,
But
definitely
yeah,
not.
yeah.
Um, yeah, and I think about the mindset of the adults, during this time. Um,
Mhm.
was it heard of back then? Was it very common for apparitions to happen, or miracles? So, but now I think about it and I'm like, okay, what if that was my kids? Would I believe them?
Yeah.
And of course, with my mindset now, I would be like, of course I would, hey, tell them this, tell them that. So I think
Yeah.
yeah, I
Put in the
think
good word for
definitely.
me.
Exactly. Tell them I'm sorry for what I did. but
Yeah.
but it's not common. It's not as common as it was back then, because you think about the miracles that happened way back to what's happening now. I mean, maybe we don't hear a lot about it. Maybe there's people that try to, debunk situations or
Yeah.
things that happen. But I think that there is still, I feel like it was more common back then to hear more about it than it is now. So,
Yeah. Yeah, well, you had a lot of different things happening. I mean, just the prayer of the Rosary and saying it was due to a monk being visited by Our Lady and giving it to him, and that to convert a whole huge swath of people that were considered heretics then. And
yeah.
so those stories would be definitely going around, and I think it would definitely be a huge lift up to their faith. And you had Eucharistic miracles that take place. It happens now. I think after Fatima there was Garabandal, and recently Medjugorje. I think that's how it's pronounced. But
Mhm.
both of them, obviously, the church they're not real quick to approve things like this, and I think that's a big thing that people don't understand about the church. They
Yeah.
think like we're just gonna instantly say this happened,
It's a miracle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. We saw Jesus floating in the sky. Believe it. He says pray your rosaries. They're just not going to do that. They have to go through this huge investigative process in order to determine this is really what's
Mhm.
happening. And then
Right.
we get to the miracle of the sun. I mean, what bigger of a thing do you need than to have something like that happen? It's just amazing. It wasn't only the sun. You had Joseph holding baby Jesus in his arms to the left of the
Mhm.
sun.
But I
And
wonder, did everybody see that, or was just that the children that saw?
I think it might have just been the children. I'm not
Okay.
positive.
Yeah.
Um,
Because there wasn't
because
much
yeah,
said
yeah,
about that. Yeah.
yeah, and I know
Okay.
like Our Lady was going through like different transformations. She's like going from the Our Lady of Sorrows to Our Lady of the Rosary, and then Our
Mhm.
Lady of Carmel, and that. I think it's almost like it's the culmination of all apparitions coming into one apparition to show
That's awesome.
the church and everything that I have been the same lady throughout all these apparitions, that this has been me the whole time. And I don't,
Yeah.
maybe the kids knew about it being Our Lady of Sorrows. I don't know, maybe they learned that at the later dates, and they were telling the priest the robe color she was wearing and things like that. I don't know, but
Yeah.
it's I think
Yeah,
it's
it
really awesome.
definitely. And the whole situation, every time that she would appear, because even for us in Mexico, where she appeared as Our Lady of Guadalupe,
Hmm.
she always would come to have a church built, right? That was the main
Yep.
um reason why she would come and tell these people, have them build a church,
Hmm.
and for the conversion, and to continue to pray, and tell people to convert. So I think it's awesome that what you're saying, because it's making sense to me now, because I read on it and I was like, why does she keep changing clothing? Like, why, like that she was fashionable, definitely,
Like a
but
music video.
yeah, because it kept saying, like, it was saying how she would change into different art ladies, and so
Yeah.
that makes sense, that she was kind of letting him know, hey, this has been me who's been appearing. And it's interesting, because for us in Mexico, she shows up, they call her La Virgen Morenita, because she was a little bit
Yeah,
darker skin, like how we are in Mexico. So
Hmm.
she kind of wanted to,
I feel like it's symbolic.
right, and kind of be similar to somebody, be similar to you, see her as one of you, one of your own. And so I thought that was really interesting too.
Yeah,
How,
definitely.
yeah,
I
Yeah.
feel like maybe like in a way where, just humans can understand, I feel like
relate.
I think that was like the main thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's super cool.
Oh yeah, Jesus coming in the form of man.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, would the sacrifice, like, would we have really understood it and had as much meaning to it if he didn't come through Mary and he just showed up as a man engulfed that as light and said, "Hey, look, I'm gonna get on this cross and die for you, and then you're gonna do this and that." People would have just, well, what would they? I don't know if they would have
Yeah, I don't think they
done
would
anything.
comprehend that. Yeah, they
Yeah,
would be like, huh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's just like, oh, okay, guy. Like,
yeah.
it's just the apostles probably wouldn't have understood it. It took them several years of showing them what to do for them to finally
Yeah, and
understand.
I like how Eileen talks about, because when you were reading about his mindset.
Oh yeah, that I just, you can, from reading all the passages, you can tell that, he was a genius, that he was just out of this world, not from this world. He just knew everything before it would happen.
Yeah, and then also she told me that he would get frustrated,
Yeah, there's always like, from what I get, I feel like there's like this sense of frustration, like he was trying to get his point across, but he felt like he had to like repeat it, because
Yeah.
so I don't know, I just personally, I feel like there was like some frustration there. And
Yeah.
I think it's because of that. I think it's because, he just was all knowing.
Mhm.
So he felt like, I mean, he was being a teacher, so I
Yeah.
feel like everything he did was with that intent of
Mhm.
teaching everyone. I think that was the best way for them
Yeah.
to understand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, and he knows our hearts and our minds. And it's he created us, And so how is he gonna, explain stuff to us in a way that's outside of our mind? It's just he knows he can't do that. Like, this is how I created everything with my word. And I still even think if he tried explaining that to us and how it really fully happened, outside of him just speaking into existence, it would be too much for us to handle.
Yeah, it would. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like, hey, look, this is how it happened, guys. And so I'll work with you for a while. Just trust me here.
Yeah, like when he's walking on water, right? And Peter falls, and he's like, "You have to have faith,"
Yeah, I mean, it's a human. I get scared, like just if I hear thunder, I'm like, oh my God, the world is ending, like, and for Peter to be in that storm and walk on water and then get scared, I feel like it's a human thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, don't hold it against him.
And then just, at the Garden of Gethsemane when he's praying and he's like, oh, just keep a lookout, and they end up falling asleep, and he's like, can you not fall asleep? Can you stay up? And I think it's the same thing. It's like a human thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that's where I get that sense of frustration at times. Like, hey, this is important. Get it together,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was definitely here with the mission. So I think that's how it comes across.
Yeah, you look in the Old Testament when it's Moses is leading his people through the Exodus, and he's up at the top of the mountain. He just leaves the people for a little while, and he goes up to the top. They can literally see the cloud of God up there, and they know that's who Moses is talking to. And he goes up there, and then of course the brightness and light of God is just so brilliant it causes his face to glow with bright, nice white light. And he comes down, and all the people are sitting again. They're making, idols to a golden calf, and they're all dancing around and praying to him, saying, forget the God that helped us out of Egypt. These are the ones that have stayed true to us. It's like, dude, hey, what just took place? Did you forget everything?
Yeah. Was he up there for a few years, though?
Yeah. What was that?
Was he up there for a few years? Or was it
No. I think he would go up there, and then he would talk to the Lord, and then he would come down and then tell them what the Lord said, and things of that matter. That's when he got the 10 Commandments, and he takes the 10 Commandments. He just that as well is symbolic. The Lord gives him the 10 Commandments, his law that he wants them to live by, and then he starts coming down by the mountain, and he sees everyone just screwing off already, and so the tablets get smashed on the ground, and all the 10 Commandments symbolically are broken instantly the second that they're given. It's just like, oh wow, okay. Like, even if you're telling us what to do, we're obviously still not going to do it.
Yeah.
But it takes a couple thousand years for us to get the hang of it.
To get it together.
We're approaching 6,000 years or so. We'll get it.
Yeah, we're still working on it.
Yeah. We'll get it.
That's funny. Okay. So I think Eileen wants to get into the miracle of the sun itself.
Okay.
So on October 13, 1917, the crowd of believers had swelled to 70,000. That's
a lot of people.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
So about 2 p.m., some began to see what later became known as the miracle of the sun. The rains that had plagued the day ceased, and the sun emerged behind the clouds to spin and tremble for 10 minutes. So let me see. So the sun trembled, and sudden incredible movements outside all cosmic laws. So I guess it was like just, it was, you couldn't comprehend what was going on.
It was something abnormal.
So it was described as the sun danced. That was what the expression that a lot of people
got of it. Yeah.
So it was a strange phenomena, included odd colors. So looking at the sun. So this was a comment from a science professor
That
from
was
Portugal who was at the scene. So just knowing that there's like, you know what I mean?
important people.
Yeah, who
Yeah.
were there is just, you know, it's wow. So so this is what she said. Looking at the sun, I noticed that everything was becoming darkened. I looked first at the nearest objects and then extended my glance further afield. As far as the horizon, I saw everything had assumed an amethyst color. Objects around me, the sky and the atmosphere were of the same color. Everything, both near and far, had changed, taking on the color of old yellow damask. So that was how she described it.
That's
cool.
wild, man. It's just wild to think about. It's like, and it's not the first time God's done something with the sun. He's done it before, and where he's completely stopped it. And I think like they said that they were able to stare at the sun,
Right.
and their eyes weren't burning. It wasn't bright, and they were amazed that they were able to keep looking at it. And it was like a like you said, with all the different colors and that, and it was just like a light show and everything. And at first they were at awe about everything. They're going, oh wow, this is, it's pretty amazing. And I think there was a huge rainstorm before all of that, and so the ground was sinking, everything was sinking in the mud, and they had this happening with the sun, and then finally that stops happening. The light show's over with, and it's time for it to get serious. And then the sun starts moving around in the sky, and they're thinking it's the apocalypse. Like, this is what's taking place right now, because then the sun starts crashing towards the earth, and they start screaming, and before it hits, it stops and then goes back to its spot. And it's, you could kind of try to say it was a hallucination or something like that, but the entire ground was dried up. It's like they're all the mud and everything, it was completely dried. And how can 70,000, and I think some reports said possibly 100,000 were there? How can 70 to 100,000 people, make that up? I can't comprehend that.
Yeah, and I feel like that's one of the biggest reasons why people are so amazed at this, the miracle of the sun, right? Because the sun, it's stationary. Like, I mean, it's not, but it doesn't dance. Like, I know there's eclipses, but the fact that, the Our Lady, as she appeared, she would tell the children, I will tell the people that I am going to show them a miracle, on October, and she would give them the date. And so, which is why all these people appeared, because they were told, hey, something's going to happen. We need to be there.
Yeah.
And so, and just to be able to, because I think first, before the sun danced, I think that's when the children saw Joseph holding Jesus, right? And then Mary was changing.
Before it danced, yeah. I think it was when the color show was going on, if you want to call it that.
Yeah. And so so the final, event was the sun, the sun dancing, and then the color, because I think it was changing at first, and then it started dancing, and then it would go back into place and dance again, and then finally it came at him. And so, like, I think, how can you explain that? Like you said, 70,000 people, maybe 100,000 saw this.
Yeah.
I mean, were they all on something?
Do you want to hear like one of the scientific reasons that they?
Okay, yes, hit us with the science.
Okay, so this is the reason for what happened. Perhaps the witnesses had stared at the sun too long. Perhaps it was a combination of optical effects and a real meteorological shift caused by the weather and the cloud cover.
Oh, wow.
That sounds so like it's not even cool. Like, it doesn't make any sense, but Okay, so I kind of wanted to bring this up because in the paranormal worlds, because I do listen to a lot of like paranormal stuff and like radio
Yeah.
stations. Um, it's the miracle of the sun is a big thing because a lot of them think that it might have been aliens,
Oh.
that showed up in their spaceship and they thought that it was a sun, but really it was just an alien dancing around. And so I'm like, well, okay, let's say it is aliens and that makes them, Catholic, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I
they're, they're,
mean,
they're working for God. So I'm all for it.
it's, I guess in a way you could, if you read like the Book of Enoch and stuff like that, there have been some really crazy visions of things that have appeared with God, and you have angels with multiple wings and four faces for heads and whatnot, and that are sitting on top of movable thrones that are flying in the air that could go left and right and forward and back at the whim. It's, I mean, I guess with everything that's since Roswell happened, I
Mm-hmm.
guess you could see that as possibly alien in nature. I mean, but I think when people think aliens, they think of, okay, it's just another life form outside of Earth,
Yeah.
but it's not supernatural. It's just an evolved being that isn't infinite. They have a lifespan to them. I think that's where the faultiness comes in.
Yeah. I'm I'm definitely like I think it's amazing and I think it's a true miracle and I think you know I don't know how I feel about it being like a spaceship like
Yeah, that's a
if
little weird.
she yeah and if she came in a human form to the children and told them this is what's going to happen and all these other miracles were happening throughout these months that that are unexplained and so there is obviously something supernatural happening, right? Something,
Yeah.
and it wasn't bad in nature because there wasn't. It was all the messages that were coming through were all to end the war, to pray, to continue to live free of sin, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that it's definitely this goes beyond science. I think it's not something that science can prove, or even disprove in that matter, because it's supernatural. And
Why why would aliens care about us praying? I don't that I can't compute that.
yeah,
Just
and so they're I'm telling you, man. For me, I can almost be like certain that they're Catholic, you know.
yeah.
But yeah, I think it's this story is just beautiful and amazing, and I love it, and it's very popular, like I said, in the paranormal world because of the miracle itself of the sun, and so.
Oh.
But did you want to add anything? Eileen wanted to add some stuff.
Just some information about the three children.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jacinta and Francisco had both died of the flu,
Mm-hmm.
which hit Fatima shortly after the visions. Lucia ended up becoming a Carmelite nun. So she dedicated her life to God. She had one more vision of Mary in 1920. And the secrets. Did you?
Oh yeah, the secrets.
Ooh, that's the juicy stuff.
Okay,
That's
who's gonna tackle the secrets?
That's what you want to do, huh? The first secret was obviously was given to him of the vision of hell, and that was very well explained, and they weren't told to keep that hidden. And then what was the second secret? That she was going to eventually ask for them to consecrate Russia. She wasn't asking for it then, back in 1917, but she said there will come a time when the Lord wants Russia consecrated to her Immaculate Heart. But then comes the third secret, and it only starts with, in Portugal, the dogma of the faith will always be preserved, ... And then it was put into an envelope, sealed, and Lucia was given it to the bishop and said that it couldn't be opened until either she died first or if she lived in 1960. And that's when a lot of the controversy resolves around the secrets, because the secret wasn't open in 1960 and she clearly lived till Saint Pope John Paul II's life. And it, still wasn't open and made public. So what do you think about the dogma of the faith always being preserved in Portugal? I mean, that's just that one sentence alone, I think, says a lot, even with not knowing what's in the rest.
Yeah, because so Portugal still, till this day, are they still Catholic?
Oh yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Have you seen videos from Spain and Portugal during Easter time and all of that?
No. Oh, is it the ones that because I think you've shared some of them where they have the big statue and they're like they take it down the road, the streets, and like they have parades. Oh yeah, that's so beautiful. I look at that and I'm like, oh, I wish I was there. Yeah. Yeah, it gets really pretty. Have you seen it on Facebook? Oh, it's so pretty.
Yeah, you have to see it. They basically have 50 people or so. Imagine carrying a statue the size of a small house on their shoulders,
and it's golden.
Yeah, and it's like what's one is the Last Supper is one of them. So they're carrying Jesus and all the apostles and the table on their shoulders down the streets of Spain.
Yeah,
and then you got ones where like the Spanish army itself is carrying around a huge crucifix, and they're singing praise to the Lord and dancing around with the crucifix on their shoulder, pushing it up to the sky.
And
it's like that's their military.
Yeah, and that's another thing that people like the separated brothers and sisters. They kind of look at these people. Oh my God, with their statues. But like it says, what temple was it? The temple that Jesus walked in and he saw the statues, that he saw the church and he cried because he thought it was beautiful. And so, like there was statues in there. There was different, things that we have in our church. And he, he didn't say, oh, you shouldn't have that. You shouldn't be, like he cried and he said, this is beautiful.
Yeah, well, you look at the first couple temples and whatnot, God had them make statues. I mean, the Ark of the Covenant, and that's what I was trying to think about when we were talking about Mary. The Ark of the Covenant, that's an idol of God's throne with two cherubims on the side of it.
Yeah.
And you have all the stuff in the temples and all of that. And it's just like, well, it's like statues aren't beyond, worship. It's just you're not supposed to look at the thing as if it literally is a god and worship it as a god. And they can't make that disconnect. They see that and they automatically think, oh, you're worshiping it. It's like, no, that's not what's happening.
Yeah, exactly. I did want to add, when I was doing the research for Fatima, there was something I found in regards to I guess it was like a psychologist way back when, back in that time, who had like a recording device to like record sessions, And so I don't know if this is true. I mean, because I just saw it online before I came, before I got into the video, and they were talking about how they had, I think it was Jacinta, they gave her the little thing to record the voice of Our Lady. And so she asked her, oh, can you talk so people can hear you all around the world,
Mm-hmm.
And so they said that she said, no, I cannot talk. And so when they reviewed the recording, I think there was like 10 to 12 people in the room, and they heard, or I think it was outside after she appeared, and everybody had gone. They reviewed it and they heard her voice in the recording. And so I think they ended up leaving. They went to one of the children's homes, and they showed it to somebody, I think one of the parents, and they also heard it. And so so they were able to hear it, and then I think they heard it twice, and then after that it just disappeared. Like they tried to replay it, and nothing would show up anymore.
I don't know. I've never heard about that for Fatima.
Yeah. So I just saw that. I mean, it could be just maybe some like not even true, but I just thought that was interesting.
Are you sure that wasn't for Garabandal? Maybe. I think
was it similar? Something similar that happened?
Yeah, there was apparitions at Garabandal and prophecies given, and it also involved children. I don't recall anything like that for Fatima, so I can't comment on it. I don't know.
Did you hear also about Lucia when she became a nun, that she also had an encounter with God, or that he appeared to her as well?
Yeah, well, that goes on with the third secret, and so Our Lady eventually does visit Lucia when she's a nun in 1929. And she says, now the time has come for you to consecrate Russia to my Immaculate Heart. And of course, she goes and tells her superior on what just took place and what needs to happen. Like, hey, the time has come now. And it needs to happen. And, atheistic communism sweep through Russia. And that's why all this was happening. And she said, if you don't consecrate Russia to my Immaculate Heart, the errors of Russia will spread throughout the world. And, the church will experience persecutions and martyrdoms and, the loss of the faith and things of that matter. And they ignored him. And they said, well, we're not going to listen to what, God said through Mary. We're just not going to do it. Because they were supposed to do with like all the union of the bishops in the entire church. And that's when Jesus finally said, you know what, I'm going to step in. It's just like, I've given you time with my mother. Now here I am. And I think it was August 19th, 1931. That's when Jesus appeared. And he said, because the Pope has gone the way of the King of France and has decided to ignore my warnings, he too will fall into the misfortunes that the king fell in. And if you know anything about France, that also involved, consecration. But that was the consecration of France, the Catholic Kingdom of France, to Jesus' Sacred Heart. And the king basically said, I'm not going to do it. And that's when the French Revolution happened and the Catholic Kingdom ended there. So, yeah.
So, and I feel like still, even the last message was still to consecrate Russia, right? And I don't know if something has to do with, I think that if they do become consecrated, that's when, I don't know. I thought I read something about that, that it still hasn't happened, right? Like they still,
no.
And so, I think it had something to do that when they finally do, that's when, something's gonna happen? I don't remember.
Yeah. Well, it's it hasn't happened yet. It's I think several popes have tried doing a loop, a workaround by consecrating the world rather than just Russia specifically in name. And obviously God said, no, that's not good enough. That's not going to happen. And so you say, well, what's the errors of Russia? Well, I think it was in 1920, Lenin created the very first law for abortion. That was the first country in the entire world. Like that was unheard of then. That wasn't anything that was being done. And that all of a sudden, fast forward to our time now, people are getting close to rioting because the heartbeat bill in Texas saying you can't have an abortion if the baby has a heartbeat. It's so commonplace with contraceptives and all that. And then you have atheism sweeping throughout the entire world. I mean, you just look at what's taking place right now. We have this massive virus that comes from China, which is a communist country. And it's kind of, you almost feel a culmination of where the things were taking us and why God was saying Russia needs to be consecrated, because they're kind of the ringleaders of everything. In my opinion, what's going on right now.
Yeah.
Just the last thing I wanted to add about Sister Lucia de Jesus dos Santos died in 2005 at the age of 97.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, long life.
2005?
Yeah, 2005.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a while.
So the third secret was never revealed.
Well, supposedly that's still a controversy on whether it was revealed or not. So when Pope John Paul II was Pope, he had an assassination attempt on him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what's significant about that is that was May 13th when that took place, which was the date of the first apparition.
Oh, yeah.
And it was on that exact date. And I think he almost died. It was like 2 bullets, I think. And they performed surgery for 6 hours. And he obviously managed to survive. But he still didn't release the secret. I think a year before that, he went to Germany, and the German bishops were asking why it wasn't released. And he said, my successors and I have decided that if we release the secret, then that will influence the actions of world communism. And because apparently the third secret says what they're going to do in the world. But he doesn't go into too much detail. He says if it was sufficient to know that entire nations would be flooded by the ocean and millions of people would die one moment from the next and nations annihilated, that that's a great responsibility on your mind. And then if you know it, then you got to do something about it. And it's just like, but if you're not going to do something about it, it's kind of useless for you to have that information. I'm kind of paraphrasing what he said, but that was it. So even then, even after getting shot, I don't believe it was him that released the third secret. It was Pope Benedict after him who did. And the secret, I think, was something like an angel with a flaming sword was pointing at the earth, and it was coming to slam into the earth. And then Our Lady took her right hand and then placed it towards the sword and pushed it away. And then the angel screaming, penance, penance, penance. And then they saw a big bright light and a bishop who was dressed in white who appeared to be the Pope. But they didn't outright say it was the Pope. It just appeared to be the Pope, which is kind of weird.
Yeah.
And he's running up to a hill, and priests and bishops and nuns are getting shot to death. And he's going up to the cross, and the cross has holes in it from all the bullets. And then, of course, eventually, once the Pope reaches the cross, then he dies, and basically the city of Rome is destroyed and in ruins. And that's what they said the third secret is. A lot of people still are saying we don't think that's it. It's kind of like a paraphrase with symbolic imagery,
Yeah, because that kind of sounds like war.
Yeah,
like almost like religious war.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, if you read Revelation, what chapter is it? I can't remember if it's 10 or 11. It talks about in the first 2 verses that an angel saying, "Measure the temple of God and those that adore therein, and the court without the temple measure not, for it will be given unto the Gentiles for 3.5 years." And of course, if you read prophecy, that 3.5 years thing and whatnot usually involves the Great Tribulation time. And then it talks about how the bodies of the two witnesses will be laid in the street, and the Gentiles will have control of the holy city. And it's, the only way that's going to happen is war. And it's so it's what I think is going to happen is Rome will, obviously, like in Fatima, will get invaded, and it'll be destroyed, and priests and bishops will die. And I think the same thing's going to happen in Israel. I think I won't, come high because this is on YouTube. You can't say certain things, but a certain faction and group of people will eventually invade Israel and then rule from there with their belief system. And
So
I
do
think,
you think in a way that's already happening?
yeah, fully. Yeah, you see communists in the world right now are supporting that faith in a way and are propping them up and saying, you can't talk bad about them. They're, it's not all of them that are doing this, et cetera, et cetera. And, they're almost shaming you for, expressing your faith in defense of what's taking place. So I think eventually you'll see Russia will sweep through Europe and take Italy, and they'll sweep up and take Israel, and it'd be a terrible world at that point in time, I think.
Wow.
So if it happens that way, when you look at prophecy, your guess is a guess until it takes place. It could all be symbolic.
It could.
So
it's still scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Wow.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Intense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, prayers and incense, yeah.
So
just like in the message of Fatima, what is Mary saying? Prayer, make sacrifices, pray the rosary every day. And that's all you could really do. And even when Pope John Paul was given that message in Germany, he held up the rosary and he said, "Here, this is the answer to Fatima. Pray the rosary." And it's really all you can do.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing, like for a long time, I was like, oh, the rosary, it's just so long, And so, but with the recent happenings with our family, when one of our beloved aunts passed away, there was nobody to really do the rosary. We do the novena when somebody passes. And so we kind of, took it upon ourselves to learn it. And day by day, it just got better and better. And the last day, you should have seen, it was so beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, we had family, we'd all gathered. Everybody was in prayer. Everybody was doing the rosary. And even people volunteered to help us read it, to help us do the rosary. And it was so beautiful. You can just feel the power.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. That day was definitely powerful. I feel like it was a very strong prayer.
It was very beautiful. And so once we were done, we all, just were there for each other. And then we had a little dinner, and then we, sat together as a family, and it was really beautiful. It was just, I don't know. It felt good. It felt right. Mm-hmm. And so, and then you start, I feel like the more you do it, the more you start appreciating it and understanding it and feeling the power that it has. And so I definitely think it's something that is it's basically a good protection, a good, because we went to mass on last Sunday, and they were talking about Fatima, and they told the men, if you want the sword of faith, here's the rosary. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And you as a man, the protector of your household should pray it and should know it. to protect your
Mhm.
family. And so I was like, oh, it's so like it hits home, it like, so I thought it was really interesting and it's beautiful. So
Yeah, I think what
yeah.
you said really uh, amplifies the message of Fatima like greatly, because there's one of the errors of Russia, and what they're trying to do is attack the family. They're trying to destroy marriage. They're trying to make it so there is no family unit. That's what a main thing they're doing. And you have a pope and you have Mary and everyone saying pray the rosary, and then you start doing it in your family. And what happens? All of a sudden, your entire family gets together. Everyone
Mhm.
starts praying to God. All of a sudden, all the things that are going on in the world, they just don't matter anymore, except for that moment of prayer and worship. And
Yeah,
that kind of shows you how that's the weapon
it
right there
is.
to
It
win.
is
Yeah.
definitely. It was
Uh,
beautiful. And so, yeah, we really appreciate you being here though.
yeah.
um,
Thanks.
and sharing all this great information. And if anybody's like interested in further information, let us know. But do you have anything else that
I
you want
do
to add?
have I do
Mhm.
have one last thing. Okay.
Okay.
So, and it ties perfectly in with Fatima. So I know a lot of people are, worried about the vaccinations and things like that. I don't want to get into too much detail about that, but there's what's called a confraternity. It's kind of like a fraternity of believers in the Catholic Church. I don't know if you've heard of something like that before.
Mm-mm.
But
Mm-mm.
basically, a group of people get together and they have a set of rules that they agree to live by, obligations that they do in their daily lives. Well, there's a bishop by the name of Athanasius Schneider who started a confraternity of Our Lady of Fatima, which anyone can join. And you can do the stuff that's in there. It's not pain of any sin if you don't do it, but obviously it helps if you do it. And in there, you agree to do confession once per month. You do the daily rosary, which is always good as well. Doing a daily act of penance, wearing the brown scapular, which ties into the Our Lady of Mount Carmel, and then you pray a prayer daily for the Pope to consecrate Russia. So I think if you go to Live Fatima, Live Fatima.io, that's where you can read up on this confraternity and decide if you want to, increase your spiritual life, your prayer life. And then they go into things about you get a certificate and you get other things that go with it in regards to today's world with everything going on with the virus and vaccinations and whatnot. So
Yeah.
it might help people that are looking for exemptions from the
Okay.
vaccine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and so that confraternity allows that and gives you the letter of exemptions and the reason
Oh, that's
why,
awesome.
and all of that. And so
Yeah,
it's from a bishop. So I mean, how can you
I know.
not
And you
not
said it's
want it?
lot live,
It's
LO.
Live
Uh-huh.
Fatima.io, and then you'll get all the information there. They'll say what all the things are that you agree to doing, and it
Okay.
doesn't it doesn't cost anything. You can make a donation, which doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
Um, but it's all the things we should be doing as Catholics, anyways. You
Yeah.
know,
I know.
confession and praying your rosary, making penance. It's stuff you should do, but you kind of get a certificate.
Yeah.
It's neat.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I that kind of reminded me when you said donations. I wanted to thank you because I know that you donated too for the
For that
the
memorial,
the
right? For the
memorial, the
unborn.
memorial of the unborn, yeah, and
Yeah.
so it turned out beautiful, and so what they're doing here is that we're trying I guess everybody's gathering to try to build a church. So we kind of do events. Well, the church does. They do events, and they do fundraisers, and they're trying to raise funds for. I think they're trying to make a big sanctuary.
Yeah, a
a cathedral type. So and
Ooh.
there's different phases. So they've done like this beautiful Our Lady of Guadalupe little like stone, like I don't know what to call it, but it's beautiful. And then they also have well, the memorial was built, and which turned out really, really pretty. I sat there and I was just like, I couldn't. There was like I couldn't. It was really heartbreaking, but it's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's a good thing to have that. And so I walked through there, and it was very sad and very emotional, because you can see people visiting their babies, and taking leaving little toys there for them. And so but it's just beautiful, and I just wanted to I wanted to say thank you for being part of that. So
oh yeah, you're more than welcome. I'm glad to have met you on the Catholic Answers chat on YouTube.
I know it got a little like I would go on there every day, but then sometimes it's just like I can't.
Yeah.
Like, there's people trying to instill negative things, but yeah, it was awesome, and I'm like, hey, we need people that are and that believe the same thing we do, so yeah, we appreciate you, and we're grateful that you're sharing all this information, and hopefully we can do this again sometime.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't mind doing it again, and I thank you for asking me to do it and giving me the opportunity.
Of course. Thank you so much. And so if you guys have any questions, anybody in the that's watching, just leave some comments, and we'd love to answer some. But hopefully you enjoyed today, and we'll see you next week. Okay. So we're just going to end it. And
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.